the dollar circulate. Let the dollar circulate. Lady, 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 circulate, circulate, circulate. Let the dollar circulate. Let the dollar circulate.
Welcome to It's the Economy on KGNU. I'm your host, January Jones. Today on It's the Economy, we are talking about women in business as part of a continuing conversation to candidly discuss economic issues with female perspectives. On this episode, we welcome Kate Bailey and Shannon Connor. Kate Bailey is a serial entrepreneur, thought leader, and founder of Terra, a women-centered business incubator and workspace in Denver.
You have to believe in it first, but you also have to make sure that there's enough people that will believe in it with you to keep you going. And if you don't have that kind of support network around you, it is 10 times harder to keep going.
Also with us is Shannon Connor, founder of Anchor Point Performance, a neuroscience-based performance and leadership consultancy.
One, you need to have a proper quote-unquote pitch. You need to be able to speak about who you are and what you're doing in a way that is succinct. And then you just have to ask. There's a lot of feelings of imposter syndrome or unworthiness or not deserving that come up, especially for women when asking for capital.
You're listening to It's the Economy, produced from KGNU studios at the Buell Media Center in Denver. I'm your host, January Jones, and here's more of my conversation with Kate Bailey and Shannon Connor. Well, we've come around the table today to talk about something that can be uncomfortable for women, which is talking about money, talking about women in business, talking about women founders. And so we have two founders here in the room with us today of your own businesses, finding your own way in the world. And so maybe we could start by talking about what does it mean to be a founder and maybe how some women may or may not consider themselves a founder when even they're running a business.
I think this is a great question because, you know, the beauty of business and of business ownership is that there's such a wide array and such a diverse fabric of opportunities available. And so, you know, I meet women who call themselves founders, women who call themselves CEOs, women who call themselves presidents, business owners. I mean, there's a million different ways that you can kind of describe that sense of self-leadership and leadership of teams and leadership of ideas and leadership of innovation. And I think it's a little bit less about what we call ourselves as it is about whatever is going to provide the level of confidence that you need to have to go out in the world and tell the world about your idea. You know, I do think that we kind of glorify a couple of these titles probably a little too much in our current society. And it's something that I've started to think about some language around it in terms of the word founder and in terms of the word CEO.
Just to piggyback on what Kate said a little bit about the confidence to go out and own your own business, I think from a psychology, neurobiology point of view, we get hung up a lot on the word and the pressure and meaning behind the word. And so when you say I'm a CEO or I'm a founder or a president, there's a lot of context and conceptualization there that people put behind it, and it can put undue pressure on ourselves to be something that we're not or act like our business is something that it's not. Whereas if you just call yourself a solopreneur, which is what I am at the moment, or a small business owner, you remove a lot of the psychological pressure to fit into this world that's, you know, fast and smooth and slick, and you can be who you really are and not worried about how you're presenting yourself. You just are a small business owner or a solopreneur, and that lets you be and do what you want to do.
I love that so much, and I'm going to have you write that down someday because I think that's part of kind of what I was alluding to and couldn't articulate as well as you did. But this idea of this culture of, you know, tech and sort of big business and raising millions of dollars, those words, founder and CEO, can put so much pressure on you. I actually find that it has put pressure on myself when people ask me what my title is. I actually stepped away from the title CEO and moved down to founder because we're still just this baby little startup. But I actually really like the idea of just, I'm a small business owner. I mean, I look at, if you look at the statistics, and I don't have an exact number, but small businesses and small business owners make up a large majority of the backbone of the American economy. I want to say in Colorado, they employ like 40% of the workforce. And these are businesses that are making between, 300,000 and 10 million, call it small to medium-sized businesses. And there's so much pride that we should have in this idea of small business ownership and solopreneurs and all of the different kind of diverse array of the types of leadership titles that we have, that this idea of founder and CEO to me is kind of old hat.
Mm-hmm. And it's just too much pressure. And I think when you go back to quote unquote the American dream, where it's people starting their own hustle. I know hustle has a lot of bad negative connotation right now. I think I prefer hustle, and most of what we call hustle is grind. Hustle is like the bootstrap. You're going to pick yourself up and do something that you're passionate about, that you love, and that you want to see make work, whether back in the day in the 1950s it was becoming a carpenter or a mechanic or whatever that looked like. Now we have a myriad of options, and the potential is infinite, and just removing that psychological pressure so that you can be successful without feeling like you have to live up to something that isn't there anyway. And you can be wildly successful without being a 1,000-person corporation or a tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue company. You can still have a really great life.
So how are we defining success then? I mean, are we defining that by what we read in magazines, what we see on social media when we hear about these self-made women billionaires out there who started with their trust fund? How do we kind of context success? How do you guys do it? And then also, Kate, with Tara, you have a really strong message, with that space. How do you kind of see people in that space defining success as some examples?
This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and I wrote a little bit about this at the end of last year. I really tried to help our members and myself even redefine success in the word of thrive. So, currently what success looks like in our nation is, private planes and Gucci bags and perfect skin and perfect hair and perfect families and buying and dismantling Twitter. And that whole idea of success is extraordinarily exhausting to me, and I think it is to most people. But it doesn't mean that we don't hustle. Mm-hmm. And I love that difference between the word hustle and grind, because I would not have gotten here if I didn't work. I mean, it is 12-hour days minimum, and I've been doing this for 20 years. I mean, I've had 2 and 3 jobs. I've literally run 2 companies at one time, just trying to get things off the ground. I bootstrapped everything I've done until I got an investor with Tara. And so, there's this idea of thrive. And thrive is different for everybody, right? Thrive for one person can mean being able to spend a ton of time with their family, or somebody else that thrive is actually having a really nice car and going on great vacations. For other people, thrive could mean being able to walk in the woods and have peace. I mean, I think that the goal for success, stop looking at what everybody else's quote success is and really define what you value. And then know that to reach those things, you do need to have, the financial capital to be able to do that. So you've got to have a job. We still have to do some of these things that create those opportunities. But, for some people that may be living out of a Airstream and not having to work more than 5 or 10 hours a week. And that's great for them if that's what their thrive is. For me, thriving is giving back to the world. For me, thriving is that hustle. I love working. I love contributing to the society. I love helping others, which is where Tara kind of comes into my world. And I also love to be able to, take a vacation every once in a while and spend time with my family. And so those are my priorities.
I agree that success is deeply personal, and it's hard to not get again, I keep coming back to this word pressure. Pressure is a really big theme with my clients in my business right now, and how we perform and act and behave under pressure. And when you see these outside markers of traditional success, especially on like Instagram right now, the private planes, the Gucci bags, the $100,000 trips to Europe, while that would be lovely, and I don't think there's anyone on this planet who would turn that down, I think true success comes back to understanding what's important to us, and that comes back to understanding our values. And for me personally, one of my biggest values in life is the ability to choose and have freedom of choice, which means I can work a job that I want to work in. I can choose when and where and how I want to work, and when and where and how I take breaks. But to get to that level of success for me, I have to hustle. And so that means working a full-time job while building Anchor Point until it's in a place where it's financially viable and I feel safe enough within myself to walk away from a full-time job.
So, how do you help people, though, even define their values, right? Because I think many people get conflicted about that. And that step itself is something you have to do personally, but also when you have a business idea, you're trying to define the values of the business, right? And what kind of mark you want to make in the world and how you want to be perceived. And so, from your experience, consulting and coaching people, how do you help people frame that?
It starts with a lot of just talking and brainstorming about what's important to you when you think about your life and what you truly spend your time on and your efforts and your energy. Once you remove the money equation, excuse me, and don't get me wrong, money is important, wealth is important, and we should not shy away from striving to be wealthy.
It's a tool.
Yes. And especially when you get, if you don't have your basic fundamentals met and you're in true financial insecurity, there's no ability to grow or thrive. But once you've reached kind of a baseline level where you feel comfortable, look at how you want to spend your time and what's important to you. And that could be expensive travel, that could be time with friends and family, that could be a lot of time in nature. Maybe your big dream pie in the sky is to be able to buy 100 acres in Montana and build a beautiful home so that you can have unequivocal access to secluded nature, right? I think just spending time thinking about what's important to you, what makes you feel good, what brings you joy, how you spend your time now if you have the choice. And then you can go through and start thinking about values that align with that.
Well, let's get back to the money. Let's talk about money.
Let's talk about getting that money, that tool. I like it.
At Terra, you have people that are renting offices, running businesses. You have people that are there as a workspace, as a co-work place. But your messaging around that, to me, really reads what we used to say business incubator, because it's talking about finding all the kind of services and ideas and advice that somebody needs to be in a business, and that you don't have to go to 10 different places and chase those resources down. Kate, can you tell me a little bit about how you are framing, giving that kind of wraparound idea, to women through Terra?
Absolutely. And I think it helps to kind of give a quick summary of how all of this got started. It was really, as a lot of entrepreneurship happens, I built something that I couldn't find. In 2015, I was about 2 years into owning my marketing and advertising agency, and I'd started it in 2013. I was like, how hard can this be? Turns out it's really hard to own a company and have employees and clients and all of the other extraneous accounting and taxes and human resources and marketing and advertising and all those things that come with it. And I really, I'm a voracious researcher. I'm a journalist by trade, and I kept kind of coming up against this, I almost call it like a rubber wall. I kept bouncing against this rubber wall of how do I grow this company? How do I create sustainable growth for my business? I didn't want to have a $100 million business. I didn't want investors. It wasn't an investable business, but I knew that I had the ability to grow it. I just didn't know how. So I researched and researched and researched, and I tried to find the tools and the network and the resources. I joined co-working spaces that they promised this sort of vision of community, and they just didn't deliver on it. I would walk into some of them, and I would sit there for 8 hours, and not a soul would talk to me. And their idea of events was sort of like, "Hey, we have kombucha on tap." Like that's it. And it was really underwhelming. I got together a group of my friends because I was like, I really can't be the only one that's experiencing this, and had a dinner party. And I was like, hey, this is kind of what I'm experiencing. And to a person, everybody else was in the same boat. And so I knew at that point that I was onto something. So, what we talk about at Tara is effectively we have this container, right? The co-working space, quote unquote, is a container for the community, for the network, for the tools and the resources. And so we do everything from, really high quality business education to we create this wonderful community through networking our members together. We do social events. We have peer-to-peer networks where, business owners are sitting in a room together, problem solving with each other. So we really are trying to hit all of the different notes that personally I still need, and I needed back in those days that I couldn't find. Right now we are building out this resource library for business owners and really professionals as well. We're not just business owners. I think about 70% of our members are business owners, but about 30% are professionals, hybrid workers. And it's really just kind of this dynamic professional community, people from all over the metro area, different industries, different backgrounds. And the goal is that collectively we are smarter and stronger together. If you're just trying to go out and do this on your own, it's extraordinarily hard. And a lot of people either don't do it or they give up halfway through because it's so complicated. But if we can be that landing pad, that place where people can come and say, hey, I've got this thing that I need help with, 9 times out of 10, we can network you with the right people, help you find some of those tools and resources, and continue to help you grow business or career. Or if you have both, we can help with that too. So
one of Kate's favorite things to say is no woman is an island. And this is just gives me goosebumps, actually. As a small business solopreneur myself, it is really hard to start out and figure out everything. Not only am I going through the neuroscience education to be successful in the actual vocation of my work, but the business part of it is also a whole separate job, if you will. And coming to Tara was one of the best things that has ever happened to me. And at the time, I just signed up as a place to leave the house and go work because I need my corgi and I need breaks from each other. And it turned out to be this community that has lifted me up and supported me in ways that I couldn't have ever imagined. And there's been collaboration opportunities, there's networking, there's just like sounding boards. There's a lot of women who are in a similar position as me who we email almost daily to talk about, have you thought about this? Or does this work for you? Or what does this look like? And women who are going to huge corporations like I am to pitch day-long workshops or seminars or whatever, and we can be sounding boards for each other. And it has been an incredible opportunity and blessing. And I think this is a missing piece for a lot of solopreneurs and small business owners is the lack of community and the fact that you don't have to figure out everything all alone.
Kate, how does that feel to hear? So you founded Tara in 2015, right? But this gorgeous space that you now have just opened in 2022. So how does it feel to hear what Shannon has to say about her experience?
Wipe the tears, a little speechless. It's something that I thankfully hear daily and even sometimes a couple of times a day. I mean, I'm constantly in touch with our members. My office is right outside one of the big co-working lounge spaces, and I hear the conversations and I check in. How's it going? What can I help you with? How can we continue to help you build your network and your company? And I resoundingly hear a lot of those similar phrases over and over again. And it really is. It's galvanizing, first of all. I can't tell you how many people have told me over and over again, like, are you sure? Like, this seems like it's kind of a long shot. You should probably just go get a job. I've heard that my whole life, for the most part, as an entrepreneur. And I've continued to believe in this vision so much that it almost got shut down in 2020 when the pandemic first started. My investor came to me and he said, I'm just really not sure if we're going to be able to move forward with this. And I said to him, I was like, give me 3 weeks. I'm going to revamp. I'm going to come back with a different business model, different business plan. And I did. And we kept moving forward. And it was at that point that I could have walked away, right? Like I was 5 years in at that point. We had been through a roller coaster of epic proportions at that point, up and down and up and down. And I could have walked away. And I sat with myself several times and just kept gut checking. And I knew that it was worth it because I knew how much impact we could have. So it's humbling.
And this goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about being clear on your values, because again, in mainstream media, social media, we hear a lot about overnight successes. And as a small business owner myself, solopreneur, it takes a while to build, and it takes consistency and patience and tenacity and perseverance and a lot of like adjusting and starts and stops along the way. If you are clear about what's important to you, you can handle the challenges and adversity that come your way. And I think that Kate is a hallmark example of that. The pandemic is just like surviving a pandemic for anyone is super challenging, but to persevere through that because you are convicted and committed to your values is really important. And I think that is the strength that keeps a lot of entrepreneurs going when it feels like it's impossible.
I truly believe that as a small business owner, solopreneur, entrepreneur, tech startup, whatever it is that you want to start, you have to believe in it first, but you also have to make sure that there's enough people that will believe in it with you to keep you going. And if you don't have that kind of support network around you, it is 10 times harder to keep going.
Well, let's talk about funding and investment. So you mentioned you have an investor that helped you with this. A lot of women have, things they're very good at. They have a talent. They make something. They provide a service. It's not quite their business yet, but they would like it to be. And so there's a lot of scaling up. If I'm trying to invest in myself, then, hey, I only need $30,000. I think I could do a lot because I've got some time, right? Versus people that are looking for hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Or see the $1 million business idea. When we talk about funding and investment in business, where do people get started with it? There's a lot of talk about venture capital, sexy. Everyone's talking about that. It's like, oh, I do a pitch deck and they're going to give me millions of dollars. But there's also people that are like, I'm going to take a loan out on my truck. I'm going to get a line of credit from my credit card and bootstrap it like that. So Kate, maybe give us some insight into like what kinds of funding is really realistic, when you're just kind of getting going on living your values through your work.
Absolutely. I have so much to say about this, and I'll try to keep it succinct. And Shannon, please feel free to hop in here. There's so many beautiful, amazing ideas out there and insanely talented people and people that have vision to change the world, right? I applaud all of them. However, what every business owner has to do before they get started, before they take the loan out, before they decide to put anything on their credit card, whatever it is that they're going to do to put themselves into either debt or into debt to someone else, which is effectively what investment is gut check on, first of all, how much are you willing to risk? Are you willing to risk your home? Are you willing to risk your car? Are you willing to risk your kid's college fund? Are you willing to risk $40? Are you willing to risk literally your entire company, 10 years of your life, your health? That's what's on the line. And that is the number one thing that I get so frustrated with this culture that we have of making entrepreneurship so sexy and it's so, quote, easy. And, I think there's a new term out there called lucky girl syndrome, which I really want to dive into, where people are putting out on TikTok and out on Instagram, like, look how lucky I am. I've made these millions of dollars. And so So we have to rip that Band-Aid off of the reality of what business ownership and entrepreneurship is, because people are losing their life savings on things that maybe they shouldn't be. So that's kind of the first caveat here. Once you've decided, okay, I am willing to risk this, and here's how much I'm willing to risk, write that number down. I always recommend for business owners that want to go full-time into something to have 3 years of cash in hand. So 3 years of your expenses for you and your family and whoever else is depending on you, have 3 years of those basic minimum expenses in a savings account, and don't touch it, because guess what? You will touch it. It will take you 3 years before you make a dime of profit most of the time. So that is another piece that is really critical. Then you need to make sure that there's enough people that are going to buy what you're selling or hire you for your service at a certain price point for you to be able to make a profit. Know those numbers. That's the third thing that is the most critical thing before you apply for an LLC, create a website, get a logo, say you're a CEO, say you're a founder, whatever it is. If you have 3 years worth of living expenses, you've decided how much you're willing to risk, and you are able to truly say, yes, I do think that I can actually make a profit with this product or service or whatever it is, then you can get started on going down the line of, now what type of funding do I need? Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just real quick on the what are you willing to risk? I think it's important to look at financially what you're willing to risk. I want to chime in on the having 3 years of living expenses, and if for some reason it doesn't take off how you thought it would, or things change, are you okay psychologically to be in a place to come out of that and not have as much savings as you thought you would, or the financial freedom you thought you would? Are you in a place mentally and emotionally to handle the pressure with all the risk that comes with starting a business?
Well, of course not. I mean, nobody is, right? Or no one would start a business. I mean, like, you know, it's
People that have a little higher,
there's
I'm
some
a higher risk profile type.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
definitely, sat down and said to myself, okay, I think I am comfortable with this. But it's, and I'm not trying to be a naysayer here. What I'm trying to say is this is just the reality of business ownership. It is the reality I see every single day. And if you say to yourself, yep, I'm willing to risk my house. Maybe I don't have 3 years, but I have 2 years worth of savings and I'm willing to not, touch it. And then you say, okay, what kind of funding is best for my business? And there are 1,000 different funding products that are out there. If you're starting up, microloans, grants, there are amazing opportunities available through the United Way, through the Women's Foundation, through a ton of different wonderful nonprofits that are out there, especially in the Denver metro community, but even nationally, that are giving you, the microloan programs, I think you can get up to $10,000. There's just these really wonderful, a lot of time nonprofit funded products that are out there to get people started, especially for underinvested founders, so women and BIPOC. Once you kind of moved past that, there's, SBA loans, there's bank loans. The challenge with SBA and bank loans is that they have to have assets. You have to have a house, you have to have a car, you have to have inventory, something that they can actually sell if you default on your loan. And they do that purposefully because they are loaning out people's savings accounts. We don't want the banks to be doing high risk anything, because that's our money that they're lending out, right? So when people get mad at the banks for not, giving them a business loan, it's because they can't take that kind of risk. Friends and family, there's crowdfunding. There's so many different opportunities. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that we see is that there's 10,000 different types of funding opportunities that are out there. The challenge is knowing what the right one is for you, and also where to find them and how to navigate to be capital ready for those products.
Well, what about the women that are doing it half-time? To have that 3 years saved up and ready to go all in on your business, that takes a while. And you've probably been working another job and trying to make that money so then you can have, your freedom and do your passion. What's your advice, Kate, for women who are working those 2 jobs and working on the dream, on Saturdays and after the kids go to bed?
I have 2 pieces of advice. First of all, that's all I've done my whole life. This is the first time in my life I've had one job. So I've always had 2, 3, 4 jobs sometimes, just trying to like continue to put the savings together and put the money in the bank and try to create that kind of cushion for myself to be able to feel like I had the safety to dream and do and create. So I am such a huge proponent of having that full-time W-2 job while also developing. And I have a problem with the word side hustle or even half-time, honestly, because you can be a business owner and have a full-time W-2 job. You absolutely can. Like whoever made the rule that you can't. And I actually think that if we could create this kind of both and opportunity where you can have a W-2 and own a business, and that may be exactly what a lot of people thrive on, right? So they have this wonderful creative outlet where they are, making jewelry or they're doing trainings or whatever it is that lights them up, and they have the W-2 job, which is great. We need more of those. We're having a labor shortage right now. I'm all for it. And I think that like if we could kind of take a step back and say, well, who made the rule that you could only do one thing and still be a CEO or a founder? Like I'm all for it. And Shannon and I had this conversation just a few weeks ago, and I continue to believe that it's a misnomer in our society that you're not allowed to have both.
Well, in talking about starting things up, right, you're looking for money, but it doesn't stop looking for money when you're running a business, right? Being able to make that constant ask and know the places to go, maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Shannon.
One of my favorite things to tell anyone is to ask the question. Once you've identified proper sources who have the capital, who are excited about your idea, who are interested, whatever that might look like, this might even just be friends and family. One, you need to have a proper quote unquote pitch. You need to be able to speak about who you are and what you're doing in a way that is succinct, that people understand. And then you just have to ask, which is, I think, the hardest block for a lot of us. I think there's a lot of feelings of imposter syndrome or unworthiness or not deserving that come up, especially for women when asking for capital. But trust yourself and trust what you're selling. If you really believe in your business, then just ask the question. And a lot of people are so happy to hear the question, and whether or not they can actually invest, if it fits what they're looking for or not, a lot can still come out of just the ask. They might introduce you to other people who might have capital for specifically what you're looking for, or they can help you in other ways, or it's just a relationship for down the line when you are in a place where they can invest into you. Just ask the question. And it's hard, but you get better by doing it.
Better every time. Agreed. And I had a conversation yesterday with Bryn Carter, she's one of our members, is about to embark on a Techstars accelerator. We're so proud of her. She's got an app called What She Said. And we were talking about this yesterday about the fact that one of the biggest challenges that that a lot of women have, not everybody, but a lot, is this idea of like the idea has to be perfect before I go out and make the ask. I would say 9 times out of 10, most men that show up an investor, venture angel, whatever it is, in those ask conversations, they probably have 60% baked in their idea. Women will show up with like 95%, and it will be absolutely perfect. And so giving yourself the permission to not have it be perfect, but have it be good enough, I think is critical. And, one of the big pieces that we are trying to discuss in more detail at Tara is this idea of, yes, you need your pitch deck and you really need your financials. You have got to come to the table with an investor, with a bank, with any kind of capital source. You have got to have a very well built out budget, pro forma, cash flow forecast analysis. Like that is the number one thing that they're asking for. If you don't have it, they will send you out the door and tell you to come back when you actually have it done. So focus on the numbers first.
And be clear on what the ask is for, and how that ask, what that capital infusion is going to do for your business, and how specifically you're going to use those dollars, I think is important.
How you're going to use it to grow more dollars, because guess what? You're in debt then and you have to pay them back.
I heard you speak at Denver Startup Week, Kate, and there was a lot of energy and excitement in the room, panels about women getting venture capital. Do you feel like there is a lack of data and knowledge about what women are actually doing in the business world?
I don't think there's a lack of it. I think that it's not, for some reason, the data is not moving the needle in the funding space, which is really interesting. And, there's some pretty fascinating statistics of, first of all, only 25% of women business owners ever seek financing. That's a gobsmacker. So 75% of women-owned businesses they're not even asking for money when they need to be and they should be. And my favorite stat, which has actually gone down last year, is the fact that women-only founded startups raised just 2% of venture capital in 2022. That's the lowest it's been since 2016. So we've actually gone backwards in terms of that capital. The challenge is that this is all despite all of the numbers pointing towards the fact that women-founded startups are actually more successful, or women co-founded startups are more successful. They have lower burn rates, lower cash burn rates, so that means that they're not burning through their investment as quickly. They have better valuation growth in the early stage. They are exiting faster. So there's all of these really interesting statistics that we keep hearing. And of course, there's a lot of background behind some of these stats, but it still skews towards the conversation that, women founded or co-founded startups are just as successful, if not more successful than male-founded startups, but they are receiving significantly less percentages of the capital. They are starting to get a lot more angel funding. They are starting to kind of, creep upwards in terms of SBA loans, which we love to see. But at the high end, at the $100 million plus valuation mark, that's where we're kind of falling out of the cracks. So, and I think that it's everything from the fact that there's only 16% of venture capitalists are women. And that number right there, women typically tend to write checks to women a lot more often, still not as much as we would like to see. But some of this is just going to have to be, continued to have conversations around it so that we can find some balance in the industry. It's not going to happen overnight, but, we hope that the numbers continue to tick upwards over time.
Well, you mentioned to me that you are actually involved in a research study that's just getting going.
Yes. We actually founded the research study with the University of Denver. So I have been having so many of these conversations around funding for women and underinvested founders for the better part of the last decade, and I see it for myself. I see it for my friends, and I'm a relentless solution seeker. I don't, whenever I see a problem, I'm like, okay, well, there's got to be a solution to it, right? Like this is not just the status quo. And one of the things that I recognized was it's the conversation we're having here today, is how much confusion there is about getting funding. There's confusion for myself. When I first started my business, my marketing and advertising agency, I didn't even know what a line of credit was. I was like, oh, you can get that? Right. Okay. And so I have this vision of kind of demystifying this funding ecosystem, because I think that when that information is kind of behind the wizard's curtain, it's only accessible to the people that are already in the network, that already know, who do you talk to and how do you do this and what kind of pieces do you need to have in place to make sure that you're capital ready. All of that information seems to me that it's like I said, behind this kind of wizard's curtain. And so with the University of Denver, I approached them and said, starting with Colorado, because we have a really cool kind of, startup system in Colorado with a ton of resources, could we map out this ecosystem and help demystify what types of capital are available, whether you're a jeweler that just needs a line of credit, or somebody is looking for a bank loan, or somebody that needs some microloans or grant funding. Like, we know that there are all of these opportunities out there, but it's the communication about those opportunities, and then also what are the resources that you need to have in place to be able to go and get that money? So it's a pretty broad topic at the moment. We're spending 2 years researching. We're going to spend the first year conducting 6 executive roundtables with a variety of different experts from, the entrepreneurs all the way up to the venture capitalists and everybody in between, to understand where people are getting kicked out of the system, what the frustrations are, how can we support this journey, this kind of funding journey for these small business owners and startups, but really focusing on that kind of middle market space, because to get kind of basic startup capital, maybe you bootstrap or friends and family, but when you get into these growth and scale up phases, that's when it gets really complicated, and that's where I think a lot of people are falling out of the system.
Where's the quantitative data going to come in? Like, is there a economic side of this that's also going to be explored?
That's why we decided to work with Daniels College of Business. The idea is really to bring together the anecdotal data with the interviews and with the conversations, and then also bring in this research back data. There is a ton of research that's out there right now. I know none of it, but I'm really excited that our research team and research partners are going to be able to bring that piece to the table, because I can listen to these conversations all day long and tell you what I'm hearing, but when you back that with the right numbers and with the right conversations of what other funding ecosystems are working on, what they're doing, then I think we have a much stronger case for, hey, how do we build something here that's going to be valuable and useful for the founders? We're working with Denver Economic Development and Opportunity Office, as well as Social Venture Partners. They're kind of our co-partners in this project. So we're kind of bringing all the people to the table that have been working on this and researching it. The Dato is doing an amazing job with the startup community in Denver. Social Venture Partners, they work with both nonprofit and social impact. And so we're really trying to look at this from a 360-degree lens of, okay, we've got all these people that are really smart, trying to work on how to get more funding in the hands of underinvested founders, but the numbers aren't moving upwards. So what's the missing component? And to me, the missing component is that the entrepreneurs who I'm representing don't understand the system.
I think don't understand and don't have access to. You don't know what you don't know. And so if you're a small business owner or founder and you don't come from a high intensity corporate business background, you're not going to know where to look. And so I think what's so cool about what Kate is doing with the University of Denver is just providing knowledge even, and how you can start to access some of these channels is a huge value add and opportunity for most, if not all, founders and small business owners.
I love that you said the word access, because it's not just access to the knowledge, it's also access to the social capital. And the social capital piece is probably the one thing that they point to that is the most critical in all of this. I don't have a percentage certainly, but the people that you know and the network that you have is the biggest value that you can build. That is one of the key pieces of Tara, is to build that network, to build that social capital, and that's something that, if we're able to bring that to the table for the women-owned businesses in Denver and beyond. I know that there's a lot of ecosystems out there that are trying to do the same thing for BIPOC-owned businesses, and so the idea, like, how can we kind of consolidate these networks together and be able to open some of those doors that currently are closed to us?
You both talk to a lot of people, right? A lot of women, a lot of people going through starting their businesses. And I'm wondering if we can maybe take a step back and think about some real examples. Shannon, your experience, doing this coaching with people and consulting with people, trying to help them achieve what they're looking for in their business and in the satisfaction of that. Wondering if you have any examples about women who are going through this and have run into different situations, that may be surprising or make us angry or...
I mean, I don't think we have enough time for the stories that make you angry, especially as a woman. But I think what I have seen with my clients is that when you get yourself to a place where you feel like you can trust yourself and rely on your confidence in what you're doing, which goes back to making sure you understand your business, you understand your numbers, you're understanding what you're asking for. If you feel really confident in that, you can fall back on that. So making sure that you're really prepared for where you are in your business. And this comes back to a lot of personal work. And this is what I work on with my clients is how do you build in practices throughout the normal course of your life so that when you're in these high intensity, high pressure, high stakes situations, you feel confident and calm. And then also understanding that it's a process and you're going to hear a lot of no's, but that the no's are really great because they get you to the right yes. And you got to know what the no's are and ask, if you can, why you're getting the no's. My clients specifically, I think just the success is in going out and making the ask and trusting yourself and trusting the process and the work that you've done up until that point.
Absolutely. Kind of building on that, there's the confidence in sort of knowing your numbers, knowing your market, knowing that you've got a product that is sellable, et cetera. And some of the challenges that you hear with, women founders, especially in the high growth tech startup space, is that they do come against a lot of bias. And look, we're not going to fix that overnight. It's one of those conversations that, I've heard time and time again. Well, they said yes if we hit certain benchmarks, and then we hit those benchmarks, and then they moved the goalpost again, and also. Conversations around women getting into meetings and the investors that they're talking to are asking them questions that have absolutely nothing to do with their product or their market or their revenue assumptions. It's much more about them personally. And so, again, as a solution seeker, I try to kind of step back from that and say, okay, is there a different sandbox to play in at this point? If women are only getting 2% of the venture capital, then maybe we need to be going after different types of funding sources like angel investment, additional rounds of kind of friends and family, et cetera. And I know that that's probably not a super popular thing to say for women that are in that high growth tech space. But I keep asking this question because I see the fact that we're not getting the venture funding, and therefore we've got to go after a different type of funding. The other piece that I see a lot is that the founder has not done their research and has not done their homework on what type of funding product is best for their type of business. This is a really general rule of thumb, but effectively, if you're not going to be $100 million plus company, then venture capital, you shouldn't even be writing a pitch book for a venture capital firm. You should be looking at angel, you should be looking at, more friends and family, crowdfunding, microloans, grants, et cetera. And so really understanding what type of business you are. Are you a solopreneur? Are you a micro business? Are you a small business? Are you medium-sized? Are you high growth? Knowing that, and then understanding what those resources of funding are available to you, and then creating that kind of capital readiness plan to say, do I have all of my I's dotted and T's crossed to be able to go and make that ask and prove to them that I can pay that debt back or pay them some kind of dividend that is going to be in line with how much risk that they are taking. It's a very kind of, Shannon knows this, like at the end of the day, these are very specific calculations. A lot of decisions in funding are not made on intuition. It's literally made on the number at the bottom of the paper. And I spent 5 years with my investor going back and forth on that number at the bottom of the spreadsheet. And it was gut wrenching. And we had to change the business model and change all of these pieces and moving parts to be able to eventually make it work, but we finally made it work, right? So it's complicated, and that's why I keep saying, like, you need to have a lifetime investment in Pepto-Bismol to be a business owner, because it's not easy. It's not the pretty things that you see on Instagram. It is a hustle in and out every single day, and is it worth it? Absolutely, if you're willing to take the kind of risks that it takes to be successful.
And deal with the intensity, especially as you get into these venture capital, private equity type of situations and asks. It's a different level of intensity that you're dealing with. And having the stomach to go through that, which again goes back to really knowing your numbers really well and who you are and what your business is. But it's hard. You have to be able to sit down and look yourself in the mirror and say, do I have the stomach for this? Can I go through this? There is a ton of bias right now. Like Kate said, there's not really a workaround. And the workaround for us is to keep pushing, keep trying, be perseverant, be tenacious, and lick your wounds when you can and just keep going and make sure you have, take your probiotics so you have the gut for it. Yeah.
Well, we will wrap up on that health tip. Thank you. Yeah, very true. Very true. So as we kind of wrap up today, I want to thank you, Kate and Shannon, for joining us. How about we just let our listeners know a little bit more about what's next for each of you, what you have going on, and if they're interested in reaching out, give us some info.
Yes, I would love that. I run Anchor Point Performance, which is an executive performance and leadership consultancy that is based on neuroscience and your nervous system health. So I think a lot about the elite athlete mindset and performing under pressure and who you need to be the person who can achieve and maintain your dreams. It's a lot like, the idea of getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two very different skill sets. So how do we build both skill sets with you internally so that you can stomach the pressure as you grow and maintain the success that you've achieved? My next phase, I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary of officially being in business. And my next phase is to grow more into the business corporate space of teaching workshops and seminars with pretty high pressure institutions so that people can learn to not just be successful, but to also thrive and flourish and be as great as you can be.
And I can say with complete certainty that Shannon has transformed the way that I've dealt with my own levels of stress and challenge over these last several months. And so she's excellent. So with Tara, obviously we have this incredible research project that we're embarking on, and we'll be announcing that to the community very soon. We continue to grow our membership. We're at 230 members. I think we just have a couple of offices left, which is really exciting. And, the goal at this point is just to keep growing this community and growing this network, because the more people that we can bring into this space and connect together, the stronger the fabric becomes, the more things that we can do together, the more successful everybody is. I've always believed in the fact that all boats rise. And so, a lot of the initiatives that we're putting out right now, supporting a ton of nonprofits locally. We are working with Latino Leadership Institute, with organizations like Girls Inc. of Metro Denver and the Women's Foundation and Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce to stitch together all of these different incredible organizations that are out there and how we can support them and get the word out about what they're doing. Tara definitely has growth plans. We're looking to open, I would say, maximum probably 6 to 8 of these around the country over the next 4 or 5 years. We're already in conversations with some opportunities, and we'll hopefully be able to roll those out relatively soon. But in the meantime, I'm really just looking forward to strengthening the Denver community. I think we have a really unique ecosystem here where there's a lot of opportunity and possibility. And one of the things that I love is that people are so open to new ideas and to supporting each other. And I think that if we can continue to strengthen this ecosystem here, Denver has the opportunity to become an extraordinary hub of innovation. So we're excited to be part of that.
Well, thank you, Kate, and thank you, Shannon. It's been an enlightening conversation, and I hope we can continue it.
Same. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let the dollar circulate. Let your dollar circulate. Let it circulate, circulate, circulate. Let the dollar circulate. Let the dollar circulate.
You've been listening to It's the Economy. Today's episode was produced from KGNU Studios at the Buell Media Center in Denver. Thank you for listening. I'm January Jones.